This week, Monday, November 10th through Thursday, November 13th, 2025, marks an interesting point in this fascinating Scorpio season. Mercury, which is newly retrograde in Sagittarius at this time, will conjunct Mars on Wednesday, the 12th. And that conjunction really is active all week. And also on Tuesday, November 11th, Jupiter retrograde begins. And we have to talk about how the trine it's forming to Saturn at this time, you can see here how almost exact it is. The thing is, it doesn't exactly perfect. And we haven't talked about this yet. And I think it's important and unique and definitely worth mentioning. It's a really interesting week astrologically, actually. I'm excited to talk about it all here with you today. Let me go ahead and get started. Let's talk about Jupiter retrograde to start. I hope that everyone is doing well. I am going to go ahead and take a look at questions in the comments at the end of this report. So feel free to leave any feedback or questions in the comments if you're watching this live, and I will get to that a little bit later. And if you're watching this later, you can also leave questions in the comments. I guess it's the chat if you're here live, and the comments if you're watching it later, and I'll read them then too. Anything about the current astrology in general, I love seeing you all here. Okay, so, oh, you know what? I need to switch this over. There we go. Okay, that's better. Better and brighter. All right. Yeah, I feel like the setup could be a little bit more ideal today, but this is working. We can see the chart. It is funny how so much is happening right now, even things that aren't connected directly with the sign of Scorpio, but somehow it all sort of carries the flavor of a Scorpio season. I do feel that we're really in the thick of it right now, and it's always a heavy time, an interesting time, a time of change. I love Scorpio season, but it can be a lot, you know? And I think with so much happening in the water signs, that's sort of extra true right now. The sun is sort of building into a grand trine here as we speak with Jupiter and Saturn. But first, I just want to talk about Jupiter retrograde in Cancer for a minute, because Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. And Jupiter has really been expanding our opportunities, our optimism, our vision, our success in the Cancer part of our charts. So this wasn't the case, and that began in June when Jupiter moved into Cancer. And I think it was really wonderful the way in which over the summer we had Venus there as well. That sort of kicked the Jupiter transit through Cancer into high gear to have both benefics together in the sign at the beginning. And we'll actually have some time like that again at the end. There'll be another Venus-Jupiter conjunction toward the end of the Jupiter cycle. We're really right in the middle of it now. And I think what's interesting when we think about the expansion that has been coming in, starting to come in this part of our charts, the Cancer ruled part of our chart, this might be coming after a little bit of a difficult season in this area last winter, because we had Mars retrograde through this part of the chart at that time. And that can feel like sort of lack of progress. Like no matter how much effort you're putting in, you might be making progress, but not as much as you would think for your efforts. It can also be lack of motivation, not feeling the energy for those particular things. Confidence can sort of be a little bit down with Mars retrograde, especially in Cancer. You know, that was a difficult transit. So If you know your chart and you know the part of your chart or the planets, the way in which Cancer shows up in your chart, thinking about those life areas and the process that you've been through, you know, even all the way back to last winter, and maybe it being a little bit more of a challenging season. And then when Jupiter entered this house and sign in June of 2025, maybe things began to look up. And on March 11th, this retrograde will begin. Not a problem, nothing bad about it. It's sort of like the retrograde season it helps us to sort of anchor in with some of the progress or the process there, you know, to sort of hone things a little bit. Not that we're still not moving forward, but we're also sort of anchoring in and steadying a little bit after all of the growth and expansion. The outward movement might not be at the same rate for a couple of months. This retrograde will uh, end on March 11th of 26. So we have a few months here, and then we'll have another few months until we get to June of continued until late June of continued Jupiter and Cancer before we get to Jupiter and Leo in 2026. So these opportunities are definitely continuing to expand. This might be a good week to think about that part of your chart and what has really been going on there, the process that you've really been through. And to sort of see a little bit, sometimes I think we can really notice the actual time of the station. Um, there may be a little bit more energy or focus or contemplation going to those areas right now as Jupiter turns inward. There may even be some sort of happening in the external that works as sort of a symbol for what's happening in your life. Um, so something could show up as well in your life that goes with this sort of turning of the energy of Jupiter for the next few months. So be on the lookout for all of that. You know, one thing that I've really loved is how it's also been about sort of this Jupiter and Cancer transit has been in some ways about a feeling of security and safety within us, sort of expanding. You know, it's been expanding opportunities, yes. And it's also been, I think this transit has been working with us in terms of finding the inner peace and safety within. Oh my goodness, I cannot ignore that beautiful gift. I must stop for a minute and say thank you so much to J1 Bebo for the beautiful bubble heart. That was so gorgeous. And thank you so much for the gift. That's much appreciated. Thank you very, very much. I try not to uh, I just had to say that. Thank you. It was very pretty. It was gorgeous. Yes, it was. It was incredibly pretty. Okay. Um so yeah, it's not just been expanding opportunities for us in the Cancer part of the chart. It's also been sort of working with us generally on a feeling of safety and security that comes from within and also that comes from our experience in the world. Finding that more with people, finding people who we have that with more, finding ways to show up in circumstances, feeling sort of safe and secure and grounded and um, present in a way that helps you to do a great job. You know, it even makes me think about maybe even going into a professional environment where you used to kind of put on more of a false face, and now you realize the importance of being yourself and feeling good, that, you know, our best work comes from that space. There's been something about that going through the collective. So it's not just about expanding opportunities, it's about expanding some of this inner desire for safety and security and belonging, and also stability is another good word for it, but some other things too. Like it's expanded an optimism which I think is really, really nice, and knowledge, and, mainly just sort of expanding horizons in the Cancer part of the chart. Okay, another thing that I really want to um, say about this, and I mentioned it in the beginning, is about the Jupiter Saturn trine. Okay, let me go ahead and put this Jupiter on this chart as well. So this is very exciting because we always want to think back to when the planets were conjunct, when they met up directly. I always repeat the same things. I hope it's not too annoying, but I know that's always been helpful for me in my study with astrology too. A conjunction is not a transit. Trines are transits, sextiles are transits, squares are transits. A conjunction is something different. It's a real blending of the energies. You can look it up in a transit book, but it actually is its own separate interaction for planets to have. And it's very powerful when they come together in one part of the sky, and especially if they don't do it often. And Jupiter and Saturn cycle with this is sort of uh, especially important or significant, and it's been studied for a long time in astrology because Saturn is the last visible planet. So it's the last planet that we were aware of for ages, and that's part of why Saturn um, signifies things about boundaries and about limits. And Jupiter is sort of the sort of companion planet there, pinging off of that energy on the other side of the dynamic and more about expansion. And so when these two planets come together, it was the rarest of the conjunctions, it still is, that's visible uh, with the naked eye, right? That's actually visible to us as humans. The conjunction between Saturn and Jupiter happens every 20 years. And it happened last in December of 2020. So Jupiter and Saturn came together in December of 2020 at 1 degree of Aquarius. And this was especially significant because the planets had been lining up in earth signs, and now they were switching over and they begin lining up in air signs. It's also funny that that's happening right around the time that we have these outer planets changing signs, that we also have that dynamic occurring with the Jupiter Saturn conjunctions, the great conjunctions. So great conjunctions happen every 20 years, but they change signs like that more like every 200 years. So it's a change of an era, but it's almost even a little bit more significant than that because we changed elements as well. Okay, so I know I just said a lot there. I know some of you already know about this. I know some of you know more than I do about it. And some of you, you're still learning about this. But you get the idea that when these planets came together in December of 2020, it was a significant conjunction. And now they're coming into their first trine as we move through this fall. They're coming into their first trine, and this is an easy aspect where they're able to move forward with ease, remembering the conversation that they had when they met up in Aquarius. I would like to mention that it is just does happen to be exactly pretty much where Pluto is now. Just kind of interesting at that sort of 0 degree point of Aquarius is where they met up. So they remember that mission, and now they're moving full steam ahead and they're communicating well with each other, right? These planets, these different sides of life, these sides of us, when we think about how, astrology signifies we're all more connected than it seems like we are. There are certain things going on that are happening for us, that are happening in communities, that are happening in the sky, and one isn't causing another. It all signifies the same thing. It's the same current. We're all moving through the world here. We are a part of the world. And so, uh, yeah, I love the idea that we are, both apples and the apple tree, right? So That's why the things that are happening in astrology, also, we notice them in our own life because we're sort of all more connected to each other and to the physical world than it sometimes can seem, than can be immediately obvious. That's my take on astrology anyway, and many others as well. It does lean more in that traditional astrology, Hellenistic astrology direction. Okay, but just to say, now Jupiter and Saturn are coming into this trine where it's easy, where the energy is flowing easily between them. It signifies really some fast progress. And that Jupiter but here's what's crazy. The Jupiter retrograde is beginning now. And basically, because of that, this trine is never going to, is not going to perfect. It doesn't, they are so close right now. They are less than half of a minute within it, close to trining each other, right? They're both at 25 degrees and Saturn's at 23 minutes and Jupiter's at 9 minutes. This is a chart from Tuesday, from November 11th. But because of the retrograde, they are not going to meet up because of just the way these planets are moving. It's not an exact trine. And I just have to say that, of course, we can still count it as one. We can really still count it as one. Here's the thing. They're going to be within 2 degrees of orb from October 20th to December 15th. And I feel like I might sneeze. Maybe talking about it will make it stop. Okay, I think I'm okay. And they will be within 1 degree. So they'll be within 2 degrees from October 20th to December 15th. And they're going to be within 1 degree of trine, of the exact trine, from October 29th through November 23rd, which we're in the thick of now. So completely reasonable to count this as a trine, to read the energy as a trine. I'm a big fan of talking about when aspects are going to be active. Sometimes when you only look at the date that things perfect, it kind of, astrology, if about like more so almost than anything, it's like it's time. That's not, there's not really like a present moment. There's not really a now. Everything's kind of in the future and I mean, there is a present moment and there's a now, but it's moving and shifting quickly. So to say that, Jupiter and Saturn are not going to be trine because it's not exactly perfect doesn't really make sense. They're within orb. Just like, here's another example, this Mars-Saturn conjunction that we're going to talk about a little bit later. I'll mark that on the chart now because that's something else that's happening right now. Also, feel how like everything has a little bit of a Scorpio flavor, even though we're not talking about Scorpio. That is Scorpio season for you, showing up. Okay, so this is going to be exact on, what did I say, the 12th, I think. Excuse me for looking back in my notes. The Mars-Mercury conjunction on the 12th. But they're so close to each other for several days within. They are certainly conjunct here on Tuesday, November 11th. And Mars and Mercury have really been traveling with each other for several weeks, and they will for several weeks after that. And that's really important. So I'm a big fan of looking at orbs and not focusing too much on the exact day or moment of a transit. We really have to try to see, or I find that it helps if I really try to see the cycles. Sometimes it is sort of a turning point when you get on the other side of a transit, almost like a tea kettle boiling, and then it boils when it hits that perfection and then begins to cool down, right? So you can notice a bit of a crescendo moment with some transits more than others, but it's never, rarely is it exactly at the moment that the transit is exact anyway. Because remember, it's not just exact that day. It's really just exact for a few minutes. Everything is always moving. So observing the bigger cycles, I think, is important. Okay. However, I do think it's interesting that Saturn and Jupiter will not perfect this trine. They will actually not do that until they are both in fire signs. Saturn will be in Aries, Jupiter will be in Leo, and they will come into an exact trine in August of 2026. So that's a while from now. So it's like they're meeting up here and they're sharing some information and they're supporting each other as they go. But somehow it's just not right. It's just not time yet for them to really fully come together. They're going to do that in a trine formation 3 times. The first time in August of 26 and then twice in 2027, all in those fire signs in Aries and Leo. So I just wanted to mention that. It could be that there's something now, sort of connected to that 2020 time that then again we can make some connection with when we get to the August 26 into 27. But this is stuff to think about in terms of the world as well. You can see this in your personal life, especially depending on how it's connecting with your chart. But this is also just about the pace and progress and change and everything that's happening in the world. How much has come up around technology and just the rate of change that we have been experiencing in so many different ways. And about how different people are sort of transforming as a result of that. These are generational influences. But I do think that, it's interesting as well. Let me look at this. I want to show this one other thing here. Let me see if I can I want to kind of minimize this because I want to see Neptune. Okay, that works. You might notice this other sextile here in the chart, and I'm just gonna kind of highlight it because I don't want to spend too much on this. But we have Neptune here at 29 degrees of Pisces, sextiling Uranus here now at 29 degrees of Taurus again. So all summer we were working with this outer planet triangle in the new signs. Remember, we had Neptune in Aries, we had Pluto in Aquarius, and we had Uranus in Gemini. And they were forming this beautiful outer planet triangle with 2 sextiles and a trine. And we were sort of moving quickly into the future, into this new era. And I mentioned that when we get towards the end of 2025, because of these retrogrades, it breaks up that triangle for now. It will be back. And now we have these 2 planets sort of supporting each other again at these powerful 29-degree points in their signs. Neptune isn't moving off of that point until he goes back into Aries. He's not even going to 28 degrees. So it might, there's a lot of support for the end of 2025, as I said, over the summer, really might feel like a little bit of a return to the past. It really might feel a little bit like 2024. Some of these outer planets being in these old signs. But I think we can do it a little bit differently now because of everything that we've learned. So if you find yourself doing something that you thought maybe you were done with, or it's like we started to move into the future, but now we have to go back a little bit. I've heard it described as like you move into the new apartment, but you still have to go back to the old apartment to like clean up and leave the keys. It's kind of that kind of a feeling. I like that a lot. So yeah, there could be an element of like cleaning up the final details of the work that you did with those 2 parts of the chart. Being able to see some things now because the dust did settle when the planets moved on to something else. There could be some final work to be done, but we have this strength now because of everything that we've learned. I especially noticed that for Uranus and Taurus. I think that Taurus loves stability, and Uranus and Taurus really shook that up. And so wherever you have Taurus in your chart, since 2018, there may have been quite a lot of changes coming in there. There may have been parts of your life that changed. And I mean, this goes with that Jupiter Saturn movement too. I realize I'm talking about so much bigger than this week, but that's what I mean. Astrology doesn't exist in these little pockets. We have to take the past and the future into account. So if you think back to 2018 and a part of your life maybe that felt very stable and like it wouldn't change, and you really liked that about it. Wherever you have Taurus in your chart, there's likely been a lot of shakeups there, and they were very uncomfortable. And I think because of it, we learned and we grew so much, and we learned more how to be flexible with things that we didn't really think we were going to be good at being flexible with. So now we're bringing that sort of increased ability and flexibility to whatever else needs to be shaken up while we're still working through this transit. So it's a great time to sort of clean up those final details, you know? Okay, so all of that was really quite bigger picture, and I really want to hone in on this Mars Mercury conjunction for a few minutes because, in a way, that's what we'll feel most potently this week. I feel. You know, these are personal planets. They're not, when we're talking about these planets, it's more sort of like a background sound, you know, a deep, more undercurrent of the, more of an undercurrent of the energy. Whereas the Mars and the Mercury are personal planets. You sort of notice that in your experience. And I do think it's interesting. So these planets have been traveling together for a while. Usually Mercury kind of whizzes past Mars. They have a little conjunction and Mercury is on its way. But this time, because of the retrograde, they've kind of been traveling together. They were in Scorpio together. Mercury's going slower and slower, getting ready for the retrograde. So it doesn't really whiz by. They kind of walk together into the Sagittarius house. And now Mercury is going to go back into Scorpio for a retrograde. Mercury is retrograde just beginning on November 9th. So just as Mercury passes Mars, nope, slowing down, turning around, going back over across. So there's a lot of positive potential here, and there's a couple things to be a little bit aware of too. I like a Mars-Mercury conjunction. I don't mind it in Sagittarius. It's very fiery. One thing that is sort of interesting is just the way in which they're kind of like banging into each other. Generally, when we have a conjunction, like I said, you know, Mercury kind of comes up on Mars and they meet up and Mercury passes through. This way they're going in different directions. So they're sort of banging into each other. And I think that suggests the potential for more of those lower signatures associated with Mars or Mercury, especially Mercury retrograde, maybe to rise to the surface. But there are a few different things here. I mean, first of all, I just feel like Mars and Mercury conjunctions, wherever they are in the sky, whoever is retrograde, it doesn't matter. They have the potential to be very productive because it's sort of the mind, like the mental energy and the will working together. So it's like you have the idea and then you kind of have the motivation and the strength and the determination to make it happen. And, you know, it can be a little bit passionate, for better or worse. There are ways to be passionate with your words that are not aggressive, right? You can just debate, you can feel strongly, you can use that passion to tell a good story, to paint a vivid picture. But sometimes there can be debate or disagreement that can surface with something like this because of the passionate words. And that can even sort of edge into assertiveness. And that can show up in actions as well, especially with Mars here. The sort of fiery, quick words and actions, the quick decisions, the impulsive moves or words, you know, that can come up with something like this. Also, because we're talking about a retrograde, It could bring old things back to the surface, old conversations back to the surface, old ideas, old arguments potentially. And it's not always the best time really to settle these things because the energy is a little bit peak. So it kind of makes sense to ride the wave of this energy this week. Use that motivation, that energy to get some work done, to get some stuff done, because there really is some momentum and some energy and some potential. And when uh, there really is some energy and some potential here. And when you use it constructively or you burn off the energy constructively, it really helps to stay on the more positive potential sides of this transit, right? All transits have multiple potentials. This one can bring, old arguments to the surface and people speaking to each other in very aggressive ways over that. Um, or you can use it really productively and get a lot of work done and go for an amazing uh, gym session and write a beautiful letter to someone. I don't know, but I think burning off the energy in productive ways and constructive ways is important in order to kind of stay on the more positive sides of the signature. And we have the support of this Jupiter-Saturn trine, which is really nice, and the Neptune-Uranus sextile. So there's some background notes that feel supportive. We do have Mercury retrograde right now, too. I am going to look at the chat. I'm wrapping up here, but I just want to say, too, that at the end of this video, I will attach a video about Mercury retrograde that I did recently. If you like this video, you'd probably enjoy that, too. Definitely worth looking at that cycle more. And I will attach something about the Taurus full moon as well, because we're still under the lunation of that full moon, and it was a really nice one. So another positive support for the energy right now. So I'll attach those at the end. But now I do want to take a few minutes to look at the chat. I'm so happy to see everyone here, and I do appreciate that super chat so much. Let me just see actually if I can do one thing where I can see my messages a little bit differently. Here. Okay. Nope. Yes, I appreciate you, Bebo, so much with your bubble heart. That was so great. All right, I'm going to filter so I can see all messages. Okay, and I'm going to dig in. So nice to see you all here, and I'm seeing some of your dates. And it's always nice when people are sharing their birth info. I love when you all find people with the same birthdays. Sometimes you are also sharing your big three, which can be really interesting. Yeah, definitely take a look for more information at the horoscopes that are on my channel by rising sign. That gives some more specific information about these in your chart, and also just dig in with your own knowledge. Whatever you know about astrology, you don't know too little to be your own best astrologer. It's amazing the way, because I can say all different things about what these signify, but when you make meaning from that in your own life, that's when you're sort of really using astrology. And that's what I encourage, is sort of the learning of this stuff on your end. Some people be both talking about being a little bit emotional and trying to let go. I do think that we've been working with these really powerful grand water trines lately, beginning in late October and going through to mid-December, and they kind of come in and out of alignment. And I think that a lot of emotional stuff can come up with grand water trines, but part of why it's coming up is because we're very emotionally strong. When we have a grand water trine in the sky, it signifies that, like, we're at a place of emotional maturity and strength. And so sometimes we can handle something coming to the surface for us to look at and deal with because we're in this emotionally good place, you know? So it's an extra emotional time, but it's emotionally productive too. And I feel like what you're sharing about your story there is perfect for that. You know, letting go of old things and allowing that to make you feel good and better. That's like so perfect for that energy. Hi, Leo Major. Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Tammy. Um, yeah, and you know, the other thing too, I'm seeing someone talk about making progress with exams. You know, um, astrology is a tool. It's a wonderful tool. It's very interesting for personal growth and introspection to utilize astrology for sure. And our most powerful tool is how we direct our energy in our life, doing everything we can, right, to make our goals happen. Life doesn't happen to us. We are co-creating it, and a lot of it has to do with our efforts and what we do. So, you know, I'm always reminding of that as well. Another thing that I'm sort of always saying. But yeah, you know, keep doing, keep acting, keep moving, stay positive. These are the best things we can do to move forward with our goals in our life. um, Oh, yeah. Someone here has a conjunction in their natal chart of Jupiter and Uranus. Yep, that's very interesting. And also sort of if a personal planet was involved, it would be sort of even more significant. That's a very interesting conjunction though. Oh, I appreciate Tammy. I appreciate everyone being here and asking questions. Tammy's asking, where do I go to see my chart and don't know what time I was born? So I am not paid to, I don't have any sponsorships or brand deals, but there are so many different places where you can get your chart for free these days. And I always recommend astro.com. You can go to the extended chart selection, put in your information, and get your chart. There are many other resources as well. But astro.com is great as a free resource. And it's so cool that we can get our birth information, our charts this way now. It used to be so difficult when I think back to, you know, the 90s, even when I started studying astrology. We were drawing charts, you know. There were like some computer programs that could generate the charts, but that was kind of brand new. And so I did learn a little bit how to draw the charts, but definitely been a while since I've done that. Um, it's such an interesting change too to be able to have these computer programs that generate these charts. This is from Astro Gold, the version that I use, but that is a more expensive app, and you might not need all those features. You know, it's really helpful for me as like a semi-professional astrologer here to have Astro Gold. Also not a sponsor, no brand deal, but would love to be. Use Astro Gold all the time. And the little markings that I use are for a program called InShot. Um, so you can use those tools to learn more and more about your chart. And then whatever you're drawn to, you know, books, YouTube, whatever feels right and interesting to you is a great way to just continue to explore astrology. I'm not currently, thank you for asking, but I'm not currently doing personal readings. I hope to open up for that again soon though, so definitely stay tuned. I will let you know when I'm taking new clients again. Um, yeah, you know, I'm noticing someone share about their chart and different things in their chart, and I'm remembering how, isn't it funny how I actually didn't even really mention Scorpio, but it feels like a real Scorpio moment right now. And that sun is building to this into this trine, but yeah, I didn't even mention Scorpio directly, but that's Scorpio season for you. Yeah, someone saying to not talk when anger comes up. That's a very good, it's a good principle to try to stick to not speak, to be still, to not act if you're acting from anger. Very, very always a good practice. And I think as we continue to get better and better about this stuff, it's great too. Okay, I think that that's everything. I loved seeing everyone here today. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching. And I will be back again this weekend for a report on Friday. Have an amazing week.